Okay, so for my Fortnight Weekly Reflection 4.2, I'm going to talk about a theme that kind of came up in the last week or so, or 2 weeks, in all of my Spanish classes. So in my Spanish 3 classes and my Heritage 1 and my Heritage 2-3 combined class, which is scaffolding, right, students towards success, and I guess approaching that in a reactive, which is not necessarily the way you want to approach it, but if you have to, how approaching it in a reactive way went for me for probably the first time I was really honest about students needing more scaffolding. So I'll kind of explain the situation. I'll give the example of my heritage classes. So both of my heritage classes right now are working on a project about a show that we watched called El Internado. And through the show, we've been, you learn a little bit of grammar, but we've mostly been learning like some new words. And then with subtitles, they get to read. A lot of my native Spanish speakers aren't the best with writing. They've spoken it and listened to it their whole lives, but they haven't read it very often. So sometimes they don't know how to write it very well. So it kind of gives them multiple opportunities with that. So last week, I had students on Friday read through that, the project. And then I said, next week we're going to start to work on it. And it was a review for episodes 1 and 2. And so on that Monday, we didn't have school. That was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And then Tuesday, I was gone. So I left notes for students that their job was to start the project, basically. Read through it and then try to do 1 to 2 slides. Read through it again. When I came back on Wednesday, I went into Schoology and I checked to see how much work people had done. And I would say probably about 2 or 3 students out of 18 students in each class had done any work, which is abysmally low. And generally, these classes have had this issue throughout this year where they struggle sometimes to complete work during work time. Doesn't really matter how much time I give them, they tend to struggle with it. And I don't have that issue almost at all with my Spanish 3s, or I do, but it's just not. In my heritage classes, it is a very large percentage. It's about 70% of my class that doesn't tend to do their work very well. Whereas in the Spanish 3 classes, it's probably closer to 20% that struggle with that, which is more normal, I would say, by teaching standards. And so throughout this year, when that's happened, a lot of the time what I've done is I've extended deadlines. I will work one-on-one with students. I will maybe write feedback in there to kind of move them along. But generally, it's kind of just like we have to sit in class and you have to do work, you have to try. And it's kind of a discussion about that. This time I decided to take a different approach when I noticed this. And I decided to kind of be more open with what we've been talking about, especially more recently in our program about students they need to have the skills to do well on what you're asking them to do. And if students are not doing it, the problem might not be that they just are bad students, right? Or that they're not capable. It might be that they just think that they're not capable, basically, or they see the work and some part of it is overwhelming to them. It makes them feel like they are not capable of completing it. And I'm a project-based teacher. That tends to be one of my favorite ways to teach because I feel like it's so much more hands-on. But the problem that can lead to, I think, is that projects tend to be multi-directional, multi-step. Sometimes you even have choices, right? And that can be really overwhelming for students. They look and they see, I have to do a 5-slide project. Like, I don't even know where to start. And I think it's just kind of an automatic reaction for some of them. And clearly for my heritage speakers, it's been a bigger issue. So what I decided to do this time is I said, you know what? I think these students are struggling because they need scaffolding, right? They need something that's going to show them that they are capable of doing this. We have done things already. So like one of the things we did is when they watched episodes 1 and 2, they had a graphic organizer of the main characters and they wrote down information as we watched of what the main characters did throughout the episode. And then like episode 2, they wrote a summary of episode 2. And then we wrote part of it together to kind of get us into summarizing. And we've done summarizing multiple times throughout this year as well. And then in this final project, right, they are summarizing episodes 1 and 2 together. And then they're choosing a character from the show and they are writing a biography for that person and showing a visual representation of them. And then they are also writing 7 main events about that character in order, like on a timeline for the show. And so what I did instead is I said, on that, was it Wednesday or was it I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, depending upon the class, because our class schedules are weird. I created a discussion board and in Schoology. And what I did is I said, I want you to write down 10 things about, well, first we started the class introduction. We always have a question of the day, which was just, what character would you like to do your project on, right? Everyone knows what the project is, but I think even just deciding that was hard, and why. And then we talked about like what why matters. Does it matter that they're easier for you to do? As in, can you write about 7 events about Maria, or can you write 7 events about Alfonso, or not? Or is that person just interesting to you? Is it someone you connect with personally? So we started with that, and then I had them do a discussion board where they just wrote 10 things that they knew about that character, or 10 things or more in Spanish, just anything they could remember. So Maria is the cleaner at the school, so la limpiadora. Busca su hijo, she's looking for her son, just like listing things, okay? Then I had them respond to 3 other students' lists with additional information they remembered about their character. I encouraged them to find one other person who had the same character as them to help. And then when that was done, and that was much more motivational to them because it was short, it was interactive, where they got to socialize with each other basically, or communicate with each other and help each other and support each other. And it was very low stress. I was like, I'm not judging your grammar or anything, guys. It's a brainstorming session is what I called it. And so afterwards I said, okay, guess what we're going to do now? You guys are going to copy your list of 10 things, and you're going to add a slide to your project, to that episode 1 and 2 review project, and you're going to paste it in there. And then you're going to use your list in your project. So like if you said that Maria is the cleaner, use that in your biography, right? Biographies are descriptions. We talked about like what a biography would be about someone compared to like the timeline of events. So I guess looking at like reflecting on how this went, I kind of looking at using Bloom's understanding, and I feel like I've gone through most of it. But for me, the biggest part was feeling or seeing right away in the next 2 days, on like Friday and the rest of that class that day, how much more work these students were willing to do once we'd done that. I would say about 90% of the students were now doing their projects after doing this experiment. And that really made it clear to me that the problem has not been, again, it's so easy to blame students and say like they're just not motivated and they just don't care. But if I need to give them really direct tools that they can take something small to make something bigger out of, and if I just give them something too big, even though it's split into smaller pieces and we work on it in smaller pieces, it can still be overwhelming. So I did the same type of thing in Spanish 3, and I won't get into that because I'm sure this video is plenty long. But it just made me realize that I talk a lot about scaffolding and I'm not always the best at doing it. Or at least what I need to make sure I'm doing moving forward is I'm very aware of obvious signs that something isn't working, and that I'm actively trying to find solutions to scaffold students towards success in what I want them, and what I think, I guess, would show proficiency, right? Or help develop a skill. So yeah, that is kind of what I got out of the last week and a half, and a big step, I would say, in an overall ideology or methodology of teaching for me.